Donk Nation, Jackson, Janet's greetings and welcome to your daily dose of donkey with Ginger. It's your boy, the Viking Donkey, bringing you some nonsensical Steelers talk. No Gingy, no Laskers this week, so we're just going to do a quick, let's call it a June update of the nothingness going on in Pittsburgh land. But I guess there is kind of a big story we'll get to on a signing that's happened recently. And maybe more important, UFL's getting ready for their championship game. You get to see some former Steelers out there performing big time. I mean, guys like Carlos Davis, a former nose tackle with the Steelers. He's out there leading the UFL with sacks. He had like 7 in the year. You have Anthony McFarland being the feature back for the Brahmin, scoring a long touchdown in the championship game to help them get the XFL championship game to get to the UFL championship game, because that's not weird at all. You saw Hakeem Butler out there, a guy who's been in the preseason with the Steelers before, making some big catches, using that big physical frame to bring in the football. It's good to see these guys who maybe didn't have the NFL lights hit them so well go out and find success in leagues like the UFL. And now there is that secondary league for them. I mean, the Arena League is something it's a little different. You go to Canadian football, that's fully different. The UFL is a chance for these guys to play the same style of football, the same brand of football, hone their skills. And I'm not saying you're going to see superstars come out of this, but we've seen out of the XFL guys who landed on practice squads and get to live their dream a little farther because of showing they had there, like the recently cut Luke Barco from the Steelers. A guy like A.J. McCarron get to show something. A guy like Matt Corral, who a lot of people thought was going to be a steal in the draft, who fell because of an ankle injury. Get out there, get some playing time. A guy like Adrian Martinez, who just isn't quite, honed enough to be an NFL passer, get a chance to go out there and keep getting game reps in games where you're getting paid and the results matter. These are good things to see. Seeing former Steelers like the ones I named there, along with some other ones, and former Pitt guy, a kicker out there, Chris Blewett, was in a game. I mean, that's good to see. You love to see the development. I love the development aspect, of leagues like that, of games. That's why baseball's so fun. You fall in love with the prospect. You want to see them get to the majors. Same thing here now. You're getting to see some guys develop, and you're like, man, a guy like Carlos Davis, who was rostered for the Steelers for a while, does this showcase land him another NFL gig, or at least a chance to get, a preseason gig? We had the kicker who nailed like 260-yarders in the first 2 weeks. Does he now get a chance? And that's a guy who didn't even get a kick when he was in college. It's just some fun stuff to see. So we'll start there on a light, nonsensical note about the fun the UFL has. And we have, the championship coming up. If you haven't watched the game yet this year, I suggest you watch the championship. I think it's going to be next weekend. It should be entertaining. And you'll get to see some of what has been the high class of what the UFL is there, of course. And now let's move on. Steelers talk. The Steelers made a signing that I honestly don't know how I feel about it. Because on paper, bringing back Cam Sutton is such a good move. He probably is the second best corner on this team instantly already. I know he struggled a little bit in Detroit, but Detroit put him out on an island on the outside with no help over the top, which is where his weakness is. Cam Sutton's definitely more of a slot corner, or if you're going to put him on the outside, he's a guy who needs help over top because he doesn't have that top end speed to lock someone down. That's not what he's ever going to be. He's not going to be a number 1 or 2A, the guys who can shut down wide receivers. He's not going to be that guy, but he's a guy that if you let him cover the shallow end, play the zones, play the slot, and not have to worry about getting beat over top, very instinctual, gets his hands on the football. Last year he was in Pittsburgh. He had a great year. Remember, turned it into a 3-year, $33 million contract. That's the type of guy you're getting back. But I got to be honest here. He's a guy who's facing, based off other domestic, incidents in the NFL, he's a guy facing a 4 to, let's call it, 8-game suspension. I personally feel the NFL should take a more hardline stance on this, much like baseball has done. You've seen people, heck, Trevor Bauer still is blackballed for allegedly consensual but rough altercations with females, we'll call it. The pitcher for the Dodgers is on the suspended list. Wander Franco, I think his name is, the catcher for the Rays. He's still on the suspended list. I think the NFL has to suspend Cam Sutton at least half the season. And at that point, is Cam Sutton going to be able to get up to game speed to help this team and all of that? These are just the pure football questions. No matter how long the suspension is, I think you also have to keep him on the roster till he gets that suspension going to get taken off. It's from the football perspective, I get what he could bring could be really helpful. I'm a little worried about how long he's going to be out because there's almost no doubt with what he did. He's going to get suspended, even if it's just. And if you haven't saw the assault, the charges, I don't want to say what they are because I don't feel it needs to be brought up. But you can look into it on the report of what was said to have done, and it's not a good look. If any of the things he did was true, I don't think this is a guy I would want on my team. It's not a guy I could support on my team. I've said it before. I wasn't a huge fan of the off-season signings the Pirates made this year and bringing in Herman, the guy for the Yankees who had domestic violence and got suspended for half a year from baseball. I wasn't a fan of bringing him in. I wasn't a fan of bringing in Aroldis Chapman. I don't think it doesn't mean I don't think these guys should have a chance. I'm just not a fan of it. I don't like the perspective of it. And I don't like the fact that he hasn't yet accomplished what he was even needed, because in order to get the charges dropped, and if you've read them, I mean, there's 4 or 5 different things in there that every single one of them is just heinous in its own right. So even if one of them's true, it's beyond bad. But I mean, he hasn't even passed the pre-court program yet that would let these charges get dropped from him. And I mean, the Steelers saying, yeah, we feel fine about it. We did our own research. We did our second chance. Man, if that's the case and you wanted to bring him in, at least get to the point where the charges on him are dropped. Let him prove that he's taken the steps to take that step to redemption, right? I do not like the signing of him before he's done anything to prove he's taken the steps necessary to move forward with it. And I mean, the optics of it are bad. If any of it's true, I don't think Cam Sutton's the person I'd want playing for my team. I defended Joe Mixon saying he should get a second chance, and I personally didn't like his incident either, but at least his was a split-second thing. Some girl came up and hit him from behind at a coffee shop, and he turned around and slugged her. I hated the optics of that. I absolutely did. I thought it was terrible, and he's not a guy that I would have wanted to give a chance to. I didn't want to give a chance to Ray Rice after the stuff he did. I'm not a huge fan of what Tyreek Hill did, and he did it before he was in the league as well. He did it while I was in college. But those are not the type of guys that if they were on my team, I would really feel comfortable rooting for. I wouldn't root against them. Obviously, they're on my team. I'd cheer, but it's not the type of guy who I would go out and I'd buy a jersey of. I would, do that kind of thing. I guess you could say by showing up and still watching those teams, you support it, but I don't feel you do, because you don't get a choice in who your team brings. And you can vocally say you don't like the players your team's brought in. I've done it before. I've done it with the Pirates. I just told you the 2 I don't like. It doesn't mean I'm going to wish the worst on them, but when they have a bad day, am I going to be like, yeah, that's kind of what you get? Of course you're going to have that feeling. And that's how I feel right now with Cam Sutton. And if Ginger Laskers was here, they could tell you how many times I hyped him up, how I said he was going to be the biggest part we lost on that team going into last year. But I'll be honest, I can't like that. And if the NFL sees that these charges get dropped, because honestly, the way it looks like the victim isn't cooperating here, is the way it seems. I'm not saying anything, but that's the way it seems. Just the optics of it, him doing this and then being on hiatus for 2 weeks, evading the police, not turning himself in. That's not a good look. I mean, what's going on in those 2 weeks? You have to assume there was something going on to try and lesser the thing so he wouldn't get in as much trouble. I mean, if you're these situations, you're the female in it, let's say this person brings all the money, are you really going to try to ruin them? Of course not. The police were called, so the report was there. They can follow through with charges without the victim, if they were able to see proof of it, I mean, the evading police for 2 weeks, the coming, the charge is still pending. I mean, yeah, they were lowered from a felony to a misdemeanor. Yeah, he can get them dropped if he follows through with all these mandated court class things. But the optics of this, it's not something I can really like. It's not something I can really root for. I mean, say what you want. I've even said it about Roethlisberger before because people tried to act like we can just forget the early part of his life and career. And his was more of a case, even him, where that female had been known to, let's say, make little exaggerations on stories in order to try to extort things that had come to light. But still, it wasn't a good optic. It wasn't a good optic for Ben. It wasn't a good optic for the Steelers. There's a lot of people that wanted to move on from Ben at that time, from his motorcycle hijinks to his sexual assault case. It was a lot of wanting to move on, and I get it. I don't disagree with anyone who said that. I just, and I'm not here to say people don't deserve second chances because they clearly do, right? What I'm here to say is, how do you give someone a second chance before they proved they moved on from the incident? This incident hasn't been resolved. It's not like I mean, yeah, the first part of the case is done and over with, but it's like giving someone a second chance before they finish their probation, giving someone a second chance before they even go to jail. It's like, hey, you don't have to do the rehabilitation part. We're going to just give you the okay to go before the rehabilitation part has taken place. I'm not against the Cam Sutton signing if he's proven to be innocent of it. If he is guilty of it, I am very much against it. But I'm very much a believer that you have to be proven guilty of it, and it seems more likely than not these charges are going to be dropped. So does he deserve a second chance? Yeah. Do I think it should be with the Steelers? Honestly, I don't know. I'm not going to say either way it should be the Steelers or someone else. But what I'm going to say is I hate the fact that the Steelers made this move before the secondary stuff was done. He hasn't served his, let's call it, probation time. He hasn't got their charges dropped yet. There's still the pending case. There's still the fact that he eluded the police for 2 weeks. And the Steelers, in reek of desperation again, to bring him in so quick, so early. And the reason I say reek of desperation is because you're bringing in a guy you know is going to face a 4 to 8 game suspension at a minimum. And you brought him in instantaneously, let's be honest here. I mean, yeah, I understand the Detroit thing was there, but my understanding is the Steelers had conversations with Cam Sutton a week prior, and then all of a sudden he signed before all this other stuff gets done. They did it in the quiet time of the offseason, right at the end of OTAs, right as Cam Hayward came back, so it'd be kind of a hush story. And then the part that gets me the most and makes me absolutely not like the optics of what happened and not feel comfortable with it was just go read the transcript of the first interview Cam Sutton had after signing with the Steelers, where all he did was a bunch of mumble jargon to avoid talking about the situation in any context. You feel if he was told he's not allowed to, what you'd be saying is something along the lines of, I'm not allowed to talk to this. My lawyer says I can't talk about this. I can't do that. There's a pending case. That's not what was said. There was just mumbo jumbo jargon to try to avoid direct answer to any question. And avoidance techniques to me are just terrible. And that's where I am on this incident. Please, if you guys have a different opinion, let me know. Leave it in a comment. I'm sure I can bring it up in the next episode. If I don't, probably next episode will be a bug. But next time we get Gingy or Laskers on, we can have a talk about this of should this stuff matter in the grand schemes. My personal opinion is it should. It should definitely affect. And I'm not against second chances, I said that, but I think you have to earn the second chance, not be given the second chance before you've done anything. That's just where I stand in it. Let me know what you guys think. That's all I really have for this nonsensical outburst out here of shenanigans going on. But I guess it's time for a shout out. And my shout out this week is going to be I don't know if you guys seen this, but there's apparently like the last 40 years or something, 28 years, a long time anyway. There's a streak in the NHL Stanley Cup of either Jaromir Jagr or a teammate of Jaromir Jagr appearing in the Stanley Cup Finals, and that continues again this year. So I thought that was really cool, and Penguins guy, I thought that deserved the shout out. Anyway, I'm gonna let you know I am the Viking Donkey. That's Viking underscore Donkey on Twitch and Twitter. Your daily dose of Donkey Ginger is the YouTube channel where you get all this fun, nonsensical content. I hope being solo for like the first time all off season was fine for everybody. Maybe it was the second time. It was really weird to not have Gingy to bash this idea off of because I really think he would have had a cool perspective on it. But hey, when he comes back, we'll get it. Leave us a like, comment, follow. Tell us what you'd like to see, if anything different done in the off season. And well, I guess I get to sign you off today. So, Donk Nation, Steeler Nation, man, ain't a heck of a lot going on. But get yourself out there, show your colors, wave them if you got them. Let's go Steelers.